Hello and welcome to another of our Photoshop tutorials. In this tutorial we're going to be creating a digital background so that you can later paste on your extracted images. The background we're going to be creating is the typical muslin type of background used in photographers' studios. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that it's a pretty large file. We're going to make it an 8 by 10 inch photographer's standard sized. So we do new document and we make sure that it is, as I said before, 8 inches wide by 10 inches long, and we'll have a resolution of 300 pixels per inch. Okay, so we'll create this here. So now I've got my new document. I'm going to make a selection by clicking the marquee tool here, and I'm going to make this selection about this size here, a little selection box occupying just a part of the image. Now I'm going to fill this selection with clouds and then I'm going to stretch it around. So if I go to my filter menu underneath render, I have an option which says clouds. Now this will fill the selection with clouds of the colour that I've got selected at the moment. So I click clouds there and I'll get black and white clouds. There we go. Just make that a little larger so you can see it. Black and white clouds, being as I had a black and white background. Now this is basically our backdrop. I press the move tool here, or V on the keyboard. Make sure that this show bounding box is selected. That gives me some handles on my selection, and now I can move it around. It'll click magnetically lock into the corner there, and I'll stretch it over to the other corner here, and that could very well be used as a background in itself. So what we'll do is we'll take our extracted image and then we'll paste it on, and we'll try the various different backgrounds to see which one looks best. So that's one layer. I'm going here to the layers palette and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to turn off this layer here, and I'll do exactly the same thing again. Make a small selection box. Now this time I'm going to try a different colour. I'm going to try a blue and white background, for instance. So here's our colour picker. Click on this here. I'll have a fairly deep blue there for our foreground colour, and the background colour I'll leave as white. I'll go to filter, render and clouds, and there we have a blue and white cloudy background. Now I could stretch this as before, which would make a good background, but just to give it a little bit more detail, I'm going to use a feature which is called difference clouds. Down in the render again of the filter menu, instead of clouds, this time difference clouds, and this basically is the same as having a difference on the levels here on the layers. It creates an overlay with the difference of the two layers. So basically if you do it twice like so, then you get a different technique. So now click on the move, make sure bounding box is selected. Whoops, slot it in there and click it down to the bottom here. There we go. Double click to accept the transformation, and then we have another layer. I'm going to do another one. So I've got my 3 backgrounds there. That'll do for now. One thing left to do is to create what's known as a hotspot. Now this is like a lighting effect really. It's like having the image backlit almost. So I'll click on our layer and I'll press Ctrl D to deselect it, and now I'll go over here to the marquee selection tool and I'll select elliptical marquee tool. I'll make an ellipse here in the center of the image, very approximate. I'm going to move this around later. And what I'm going to do is to create an adjustment layer. Now I'll click over here, create an adjustment layer, and the layer I want is a hue and saturation one. There we go. Here's a hue and saturation dialog box. Now this will only apply to the area that I had selected. I don't want to be bothered with the hue and the saturation. I don't want to change the color at all. I'm just going to deal with the lightness, and I'm going to make it completely black. I'm going to make it dark all the way over here, and I'll press OK. Now I don't want it to be black, I want it to be white, and I want the outside area to be black, so I'm just going to invert it. Click on the mask, press Ctrl I, and that inverts it. Now, two more things I'm going to do. First of all is I'm going to blur it completely. So I'll go into Filters and Blur, and I'll select Gaussian Blur, and I want a really high value Gaussian blur. Let's have a look. A lower value and it'll be quite sharp still. I'll have to take it up really high. So that's very nicely faded in there at maximum blur. I'll press OK. Just wait for it to finish rendering. And there we go. And one more thing, just to bring the background back in, as it were, is to make this adjustment layer opaque. So I'll click on the selector here and I'll slide it down a bit. If I slide it all the way, then it takes away the effect completely. So I want it to be dark around the edges but not black. Now that would be a very moody photograph, a very moody portrait, and that would be a little slightly more atmospheric. I'll leave it there. Now the parameters of this hotspot, of this lighting effect if you like, can be changed at any point. That's the whole idea of putting them onto an adjustment layer. We can change them, completely configurable. We can even move the spot around. So what I'm going to do now is to paste on an image that I extracted earlier, and then we can move the hotspot around, make it larger, smaller, brighter, darker, whatever's needed to accompany the image and the background that we select for it. So here's an image that I created earlier. Just going to drag on the extracted layer, drag the layer itself onto our image here. There we go. I'll press the move tool to move it around and move it down here. So there we have the image in the middle of our new picture, in the middle of our backdrop. So now I'm going to move the hotspot around to accompany the image. So I'll click on the adjustment layer we have here. With the move tool selected, I'll click on show bounding box. That'll give us little handles, and that's the center of our light, so I can actually move this around as I like. So I'll move it right behind his head there, make it a little bit bigger, a little bit more ellipse, and I'll twist it round, come down here a bit, out there a bit. And there we have quite an atmospheric effect. Double click on it to render it, and just so we can have a good look at it, I'll unclick show bounding box, and that's not a bad effect that we've got there. Very dark around the edges, lighting you can see, and it's quite a respectable imitation of the muslin backdrops that are used in professional photography studios. So let's just try this image with some of the other backgrounds that we created, and there it goes nicely on the blue layer. It's a bit bright. Let's try it on the black layer. That's quite atmospheric as well. So there you have it, 3 different backgrounds easily created and completely configurable hotspots. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you liked it, you can try going to our website, which is www.photographybook.net. We've got some more tutorials on that site, and there's our blog, which is full of information on photography in general. So thank you for joining us, thank you for watching, and until next time.